Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of Superhero Speak.
But I think many of the people that love this character and that love superheroes in general have used these stories as inspiration to say, you know what, I'm going to do something good in the world. I'm going to make a difference like my hero when I was a kid.
That is my fondest memory of it, because when you're doing comic books, you want them to affect people.
Right.
You want people to care. You want to strike emotions. And I knew that Clone Saga was striking a lot of emotions.
Can you imagine Pulp Fiction starring Goofy and Mickey Mouse?
I can totally imagine that.
I'm sure somebody's written that one too.
Quarter pounder with cheese in France, Mickey? What? Boy, ale with cheese, Mickey. Yeah. I can totally.
See?
I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Yes, I gladly sacrifice up my progeny to you, almighty Marvel beast.
But Neil Adams is somewhere going, it's my time.
How do you measure success?
So, John O'Grady, superheroespeak.com, and here for Cosmic Geppetto, because one slave driver just wasn't enough, in lieu of Brad Mendenhall. And I am here at AwesomeCon in Washington, D.C. with Arthur Suydam, who is basically all things zombie. And when I say all things zombie, I'm sitting here looking at his table, and there is like literally a zombie version of everything. Zombie babies, zombie Deadpool, which is kind of redundant. There's a Toddy McSpidey zombie. There's a
the A to Z.
Yeah, basically
the A to Z of zombies, right?
So now you were telling me you are the Zombie King, which is actually on your.
So they say. Yeah. The little kids gave me that name actually.
Oh well,
at these shows
you get to keep it. I mean,
yeah, it's okay. It fits, I guess. I think half of it had to do with the fact they couldn't pronounce my name and they couldn't remember my name, so they just started calling me the Zombie Guy, because my work is actually what prompted the whole zombie phenomenon. It actually was instrumental in getting the Walking Dead sign on TV and then everything else that went along with it.
So how did that work then? I mean, what exactly happened that they saw your work and they like it inspired them and they found this looks good enough?
Yeah, it was a little bit different than that. What actually happened was, there was a little known black and white comic series called The Walking Dead that nobody was really reading, and I think had a readership of about 2,000, 3,000 people. And they'd been the owners of the series had been taking around and shopping it to try to get movies or TV show interest in it, and for 6 years nobody had any interest in it. They said, well, we don't know who you are, meaning the writer, and nobody likes zombies. Nobody cares a hoot about zombies. Zombies are dead. Zombies aren't hot. And so they all said no to it. That was until the writer, which is Robert Kirkman, and I partnered up on the Marvel Zombies, and that became one of the best sellers of all time for Marvel. And it started off this trend, and then after that, I did two more big zombie series. I did a series called Raise the Dead for Dynamite Entertainment, and then I did Marvel Zombies vs. Army of Darkness for Dynamite Entertainment, and these became bestsellers of all time for all these publishers. That's what started the whole thing off. Then all of a sudden, and we were winning every award that came down the pike. Marvel Zombies was winning it. And so all of a sudden, zombies became like the British invasion when the Beatles came over. Everybody just started it started a snowball going downhill thing, and everybody started to use zombies and took interest in putting zombie projects out. Plants vs. Zombies became the number two game in the country. Number one was Angry Birds. Number two was Plants vs. Zombies,
which I played.
Yeah, okay. And then Brad Pitt went out and bought the rights to World War Z. And et cetera, as Toyota started putting zombies in their car commercials on TV, the snowball just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
So we have you
but this is what started it all.
So we have you to thank to get rid of those sparkly
to a large degree, because the thing with Marvel Zombies is people are just buying the book to get the covers. So I was doing all these homages to old classic covers, and the book kept selling out every 2 days, every 1, 2, 3 days. The entire print run of the book would sell out. And then the publishers would come back to me, being Marvel Comics, ask me to do another cover because people were just buying them to get the covers. And they put that on, and that would sell out in 2 days. Then he'd come back to me again. So this just went on and on and on for like five 5 print runs of the series. And then finally, it wasn't until finally after the trade paperback came out that people started reading it, and they were actually able to sit and read the thing from cover to cover from beginning to end, and they realized that, wow, this was a really great story. The writing on it was really fantastic, and I believe that year it won the Spike Award, Scream Award, best comic of the year, best artist of the year, best writer of the year, and it just it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger from there.
So you spawned like all of this, but your family name, the Suydams, go back pretty far as classically trained
That's
artists.
correct. Yeah. I had I personally have about 40 years classical Renaissance drawing, painting, and sculpting training. So I'm really trained to paint religious art, but I come from the East Village. It's kind of there's a little tiny neighborhood there where a lot of pop culture trends seem to come from. Punk rock music, rap music, new wave music, all these fashion trends, all the movements in poetry and music, Bob Dylan, Jimi Hendrix, all this stuff happened in my neighborhood. So I'm just one of those guys that happens to be from that kind of a hotbed of pop culture, I guess. There's something about that neighborhood. I'm not quite sure what it is. I think it's the diversity of it, and it's very bohemian. It's the most bohemian place I've ever seen. So it really is like Beatnikville. We're all beatniks to some degree.
It's a good place to engender creativity.
Yeah. So you're surrounded by other creative people, and so it keeps it fresh on your mind, and every day is a learning experience. And if I had to size it up, I think that's probably how I would do it. But regards to the classic family name, the Suydams go all the way back to 16th century, before this was the United States. They came over from Holland to set up a trading post in North America in the 16th century. The trading post, they fought in the Indian Wars, Hudson River Indian Wars. The trading post ended up becoming New Amsterdam.
Okay.
And then New Amsterdam ended up becoming New York. So it was so New York used to be a Dutch colony. And so the Suydams were part of that Dutch colony. And later on, around the 1800s, at the advent of the Civil War, there were about a dozen painters called the Hudson River Painters who won American fine artist recognition for the first time worldwide. If you recall, it used to be thought that the only good painters come from France, from Holland, and from Denmark, and from England, but there were no good artists in the Americas. That was until the Hudson River Painters came along, and so actually two of those dozen painters were Suydams. One was James Suydam, and the other one was Henry Suydam. Fast forward later to around the 1920s, 1915, 1920s. There was another Suydam named E.H. Suydam who became known as America's foremost architectural artist. He basically traveled the world, would do a book of drawings of the cities, did the United States, and after he did all the major cities in the United States, he started to move to Europe and South America and the Middle East and do the same thing over there. So I'm the latest Suydam. Those guys did landscapes, and I do zombies.
Well, they're related in a way. One could feed the other. But how did you get your start? You're growing up in this place that is basically like Creativity Central,
right?
And what got you started? Your family is art, but what got you started down this road?
Two things. What got me started? One is the family. My entire family, they're all in the arts of some sort. Actually, most of them are musicians. So most of them tend to be musicians. My father was a country musician. All my uncles and aunts were all bluegrass musicians. And then my mother was a painter, and so she had a paint set around since she wasn't using it and hadn't touched it. Once she started to have kids, she just never touched the paint set again. And I asked her at some point, "Hey, come on, can I use your paints?" And she said yes. That started me, and it was an oil paint set, so I started fooling around with the oil paints. I had an uncle who actually studied with Norman Rockwell. His name was John Suydam.
And you have a Norman Rockwell here.
I have a tribute. I have a tribute piece which I did for the Raise the Dead series to Norman Rockwell, and so that kind of started my formal fine arts studies at about age 8. I inherited that from my aunts, and then when I was old enough to go to college, around 18, 19, I started to go to. There was a school that was a recreation of the school of Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Raphael. It was the first school of its type in the world. They're called classical ateliers. So based on the notes of that trio of artists from Italy, they rebuilt the school. So the first one came out. It ended up being like 4 blocks from my house in New York. So I was fortunate to have access to that school. So that's also what started me on the zombie thing, because the curriculum was 99% anatomy. So it was very similar. Parts of it were very similar to medical school. So we had to go to, we had to work with cadavers all day long. So for 2 years, we had to take them apart, put them back together again. We had to sculpt them. We had to draw them. We had to paint them. And that first school was the New York Academy of Figurative Art. And then from there, I went to the Art Students League, which coincidentally happens to be the school that Norman Rockwell studied at. And I went to that school as well.
And what you took away from that was, zombies.
Well, yeah, and I grew up reading comic books. Comic books really got me into the drawing, started me on drawing.
Yep.
And then, as an artist, once you discover the great works, hopefully as you're going along in your career, you come across other people's work that open new doors to you. And so the Norman Rockwell course really did that for me, because it exposed me to all the great illustrators of the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. The list is long. And those guys probably technically had the greatest drawing skills of all time. Some of them for sure.
Did Roger Corman come into it at all?
No, Roger Corman. Well, I like the movies, so I was watching horror movies, all the Hammer films, all the B and C science fiction films. So I grew up on all that stuff. And in the arts, it's you are what you eat, and if you're eating film noir and horror movies, it becomes something that you just become very comfortable and very familiar with. So when they're looking for somebody to do that kind of work, you become the go-to guy.
And I'm assuming you enjoy it too. I mean,
pardon me?
I'm assuming you enjoy it.
I love it. Yeah, I do love it. Yeah, I love watching them, and I love working on them as well. Yeah.
So you've done, was it the Marvel
Zombies? I did. Yeah.
Was it the
Ash. Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash for DC Comics? Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I did the Merc with a Mouth series for Marvel Comics. I'm told that's the best-selling Deadpool series of all time.
And the DC one?
The DC I tell you what, my first professional jobs were for DC Comics. When I was in high school, actually, they hired me to start working on they used to have these anthology books, horror anthologies. Mm-hmm. They were similar to the Tales from the Crypt books from the EC Comics from the 1950s. And there's one artist there who actually was one of the artists from EC Comics named Joe Orlando, and he's the guy that hired us all. He gave us all our work. He hired me, hired Bernie Wrightson, hired Mike Kaluta, hired Michael Golden, hired Alex Nino. Basically, anybody that was really good in the business, Joe's the guy that hired him. Yeah. So he had the eye. We were talking about that a little bit earlier about having the eye and for talent and not having the eye for talent. And Joe definitely had the eye.
What was like the one that you enjoyed working on the most?
You mean zombie project?
Or any project. I mean, even if it wasn't zombie. I mean, not everything is zombies. But
yeah, well, everything on this table is zombies.
True.
I got you.
Even the Beatles.
I don't know if I could pick one, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be the Marvel Zombies. Probably the Marvel Zombies.
It was really that enjoyable, huh?
It really was, yeah. I love doing it. I love working on the series.
Would they give you wide berth to just...
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons it was good, and I think that's one of the reasons that the result came out really well. And it's the same for the writer as well, that they basically, they just left us alone to come up with something, and we came up with something great. And so, when there's problems in the arts is when the bean counters get in there and they just can't help but interfere with the development of something that has integrity and it's fresh, so.
Yeah, we were talking about that MCU versus the DC.
Yeah.
So,
they left us alone. I chose my own covers. When I was running out of covers that I was thinking to homage, there was a artist liaison at Marvel Comics that was helping me out with some of the era of Marvel Comics that I was less familiar with, and he would make some recommendations, and then I would choose from what he recommended, and His name was Chris Lowe, and the result was a really great project.
Well, and it was very successul. I mean,
it was very successful. John Barber was great because John let us do our thing. John Barber was the editor for Marvel Zombies, and I think he had a sense of how to get the best work out of the talent. Which is basically put guys with great talent together and then kind of leave them alone and let them come up with something that's great. Don't interfere. Yeah.
And it was so good that DC is now trying to copy that. And, that is the greatest form of flattery, right?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
I've heard that said before.
So we're here at the Awesome Con. I haven't been here before. Have you been here before?
This is my first time here.
Oh, first time? Okay. Yeah. What other cons do you go to?
Well, I'm at one every weekend. And there's so many of them, I can't remember the name of any of them. But every weekend I'm at a show somewhere.
I talked to a lot of the artists, and that's a really grueling type of thing.
It is. It can be grueling, but the two parts of working in the industry as an artist that I like the best. One, I like being alone, locking myself away, and working on the work. Try to come up with something that's worth putting all the work into. So doing the paintings, I really like that. I like writing the stories. Other than that, when the book comes out and you get to hold it in your hand, I really like that. Other than that, it's actually like meeting the fans here at the show. So I love it. That's great. I get for me personally, I can't vouch for this for anybody else, but for me personally, I feel like I get my understanding of the business of comic books and of publishing from talking to the fans, because I'm able to basically take an inventory on what they like and why they like it and why they don't like it, and it helps me when I'm psychoanalyzing a design for a painting that I'm doing. So yeah.
That's
informs me.
Perfect. I mean, when you listen to the fans,
I listen to the fans for what they did, what they liked, and why they liked it, what they didn't like, and why they didn't like it. And I feel that this gives me an informed perspective on when I'm designing my own pictures on what roads not to take and maybe some roads that are a good idea to take. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite form of art? Because you've done there's an Andy Warhol homage to Andy Warhol.
Yeah, Andy Warhol and we used to go clubbing together back in the late 70s, early 80s. He's from my neighborhood.
Oh, you must have stories. Damn.
That didn't last very long. But for a while, we would go out clubbing. He was managing a group at the time, a new wave group. So we would go out he just saw me at a club one time and he just like picked up on me and asked me that I want to go out to clubs. And I was going to the clubs anyway because I'm a retired musician now. But I used to play and I used to love to go see the wacky, especially in the 1980s, the wacky new wave bands that were around, and they were wacky, really, really, really strange. And so we would go out and we would check the bands out. Yeah.
What'd you play?
I'm a singer-songwriter. I play guitar, bass, and drums as well. I'm a lead guitar player. I did a lot of movie soundtrack work. I composed it. I was a studio musician, so I was being called in all the time to play guitar and sing on other people's tracks, that kind of thing.
So there's literally no point in your life where you weren't creating something. I guess.
Something, yeah. I mean, I'm in the arts, and when you're in the arts, one art just opens up, like I was saying, it opens up doors, opens up windows to other things. You step through the door, and before you know it, you're here. You have a foot here. You have a foot over here. That kind of thing. Yeah.
Do you have anything coming up that you can talk about, or even better, that you can't talk about?
Well, I can. Yeah. So I'm working on the DC's version of Marvel Zombies, which is called Deceased.
Right.
I just turned in the first cover. I'm working on the second one right now.
The cover. Which cover for? I forget. Deceased is across a bunch of different properties, right? So
I didn't. You know more about it than me. My understanding is there's a book series called Deceased. And okay. I just did issue 1. I think it's coming out in the beginning of May. Right. And I'm working on the cover for issue 2 right now. So I believe I'm doing the whole series. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you talking to us. Where can people find your stuff online?
Under my name. If they type in Arthur Suydam. They can find that online, just especially on YouTube. There's a lot of stuff.
Okay. And we like to end these with a question, and I am so sorry to ask this. How do you measure success?
How do I personally measure success?
Yeah.
Hey, that's the first time anybody's ever asked me that. I think for me personally, how I measure success is really if the job you're doing is the job that you love, it's the work that you love. To me, that's success. And especially if it just pays the rent and puts the food on the table, and it's the job that you love. To me, that's the definition of success for me, whatever the job may be.
Probably a secret to a long life too. You know?
Hopefully.
As long as you enjoy it. Okay. Well, again, appreciate you coming on. And
my pleasure, man. My pleasure. Good meeting you and good talking with you.
All right. Thanks, Ed.